Hey you, this is Jasim from CodeBand, and in this video I'm gonna be showing you the form validations in Laravel. So if you are new to my channel, please do subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon near to it. So without any further, let's jump right into it. Alright guys, so in the last lecture we have talked about creating a new to-do object. We have set up a route for that, /create, and that hits the store method here right in the controller, and we just saved and redirected back to the home page. So that's the logic we have done so far. Now if you haven't watched those previous lectures, please do watch. The link I'll put in the description section, so you just watch those and follow along. So with that being said, now in this video we're going to be validating the request, just like if the user gives the empty to do, if it tries to generate an empty to do, or if he exceeds the maximum length of 124 to be greater than 124, then we have to give those error messages like this cannot be empty and this cannot be more than 124. Now in order to do that in the controller right in here, all we have to say is like I'll just create a variable $validated data. Now this validations at the end will give you the associative array containing the validated fields. Just like if the title field is validated, then it will just give the validated data associative array with that title in it. So I'll show you at the end what this variable does. Now $validated data is equal to, I'll say $request. Now this request is this one, the request object. Then we access the validate method right in there, and in the validated method we pass in an associative array, which means which fields you have to validate. So I'll start off with the title. We only have title, so I'll just say title. Then I'll put the arrow, this one, and this implies, and here in this one we'll set the validation rules. Now we have just two validations, like the field is required. Now in order to do multiple validations, you just have to use the pipe character, and the next one we have is the maximum length, and you just have to say max colon, and the length, if we look into the migrations, we have 124, so the max length is 124, so I'll say max 124. Now with this being said, all our validations are set. Now if you have multiple fields, like if you have a name field, then you'll just say comma name is equal to now the rules you specify in here. Now if you just have one rule, you can just do it like this. And there is also another method of doing this, like you can pass in an array just like this one, required comma the max 255. Now this will also works fine. Now I'll just stick with the old method, this one. So with this being said, now Laravel will try to validate the title field with these two validation criterias, and if anything fails, then Laravel will automatically redirect to the previous page along with the error messages flashed to this session, so that we can access those error messages right in our previous page, which means the home.play.php. We can access those error messages right in here. Now in order to do that, what I have to do is I'll just find the title input here, and underneath I'll just display those error messages. For that I'll just use the blade directive at error, and the field of the error is title. Now which means if there is an error in the title field, then I'll just close the error by saying end error. Now in between, if there is an error, I'll just say I'll just use a small tag, by the way, and I'll just use the class of text danger, so that the color will be red, and also I'll just use a little bit of margin at the bottom. So with that being said, now I can just say $message. I can just output the $message. Now the $message will be the error that might be like if it is required, then that error message will be there in the $message. Or if it was like greater than 124, then it will be that. Now this $message changes according to the error. So now with this being said, now if I try to, now all these logic, now if the validation is successful, then I will do the rest of the logic in here. If it fails, then it redirects to the previous page with the error messages flashed into the session, so that we can access it in this way. If there is an error in the title field, then just output those error by accessing the $message variable. Now this being said, I'll just run the server, php artisan serve. My exam is running. Now if I go to this URL and try to submit without any title, let me click submit, and boom, it gives me the validation errors. The title field is required. So the validations is working perfectly. Now if I check with the max length, I'll just copy this one and I'll just paste, and I'll just paste a lot of them, and if I click submit, then again it gives me the title may not be greater than 124 characters. So everything is working perfectly fine. Now this is one way of doing it, and there is also another way. Now also there is a lot of validations you can provide in here. Now I'll put a link in the description section for the official documentation, where you can find, if you scroll down a little bit, then you can find a lot of validation rules. These all are validation rules. We just use the required and the max. So that's all about it. Now this validated data, I have said that I'll explain that. I'll just dd the validated data, and if I look into, if I do something like this one, it will now dd the validated data, and it holds an array, associative array, with those validated fields. So this is very useful for creating a new object. Now I'll just comment this out. Instead of doing this way, instead of manually creating an object and assigning its title property, we can use a handy function right there. So before moving into that, some things you have to note is, we can of course use like $to-do is equal to new to do without the parentheses. And also, instead of accessing the post method, the post array, you can also say $request of title directly. Now these all are perfectly fine, no issues with that. This is we should say the magic methods, as they have mentioned there. I just showed you the hardest way of doing it, but this is the simplest way of doing it. Now it'll just work fine if I go to the home page, and I'll just create something like validated and submit. Now it gives me that validator right in here. Now that's successful. Now that's all about this one. Now I'll just get rid of these things. I'll just comment those out. Now I have told you there is a good way of doing it. I'll just say to do our model, then I'll just say create. Now we can just pass in the validated data, which means the validated data is nothing but an associative array containing these fields, title, and whatever we typed in. Now this array you can pass into the create method of to do model. Now it will just work as an alternative to this one, but with just one line of code. Now there is this is known as the mass assignable concept, a concept of mass assigning. Now mass assigning is prohibited by default in Laravel, which means this won't work. And if I just show you by typing in something like SDF, and if I click submit, then it gives me add title to fillable property to allow mass assignment, which means we have to add a property in our to do model. So if I go to app, and sorry for that, if I go to app in the to do.php, in here you can add a protected property, protected fillable, just like this one they have set, and is equal to just an array of the fields, so title. So what this does is, you can use mass assignable, or you can use the concept of mass assignable for this particular field. This is allowed to use the mass assignable concept. So title itself. Now we have just title in here, only one field. Now if you have a lot of fields, you can add those fields right in here by comma separated, and that will just work fine. Now if I save that and come back in the home page, and if I try to I'll just give a success, and it just gives me that back. Now this is working perfectly. Now if you have a lot of fields, then it will be time consuming to actually do that by using comma and all. Now that will be a little bit cumbersome. So what you can do is you can specify another property known as guarded, which is equal to, you can specify an empty array, which means this essentially means guarded is nothing but the fields. If I do something like guarded is equal to title, now title is not mass assignable, which means you cannot use this type of syntax. It is not mass assignable. Title is not mass assignable. But if I do something like an empty array, now which means no fields is guarded. You can use any fields on the concept of mass assignment. You can use any fields. So which means this essentially works. Now if you have multiple fields, that will work too. No issues with that. Now if I save and do the if I'll just refresh the page and I'll just say guarded right in here, and if I submit, that's here. Now that's working perfectly fine. Now that's all about the the validations and all. Now there is one more thing I have to mention in here. We just use the blade directive at. Now if you have multiple error messages, then what you can do is you can just loop through that by using a for each loop, and in here you can say $errors. Now $errors is a message bag, which means I'll have all those errors and I'll just access the errors of this field. So I'll just get title, which means all the errors in the title field, and I'll just say as, and I'll put a variable as $error. Now I'll just end the for each. Now this will work perfect. Now instead we have to change this message to this error, and that's it. It'll work just fine. Now if I save that and come back in here, refresh the page, and I'll just use for each. Now I'll get the same exact thing. That's working. Now you can of course use this way or the other. That's up to you. If you have multiple errors, then you can use this one. And you can find a lot of things in the documentation, like here if we just use this method right in here, and you can use if you want to get all the errors, then you can use the all property here. And there is you can of course check if a field has some errors, and there is of course a lot of things you can find in the documentation. The link is in the description so that you can refer those. So that's all about this form validation stuff. Now I hope you understood the concept, and if you have any doubts or if you fell into some errors, please let me know in the comment section. Otherwise, if you like the video, please hit the thumbs up button, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon near to it. So thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.